Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host. Today, joining me, not MAGA Jesse. He came down with a little illness. Gunner for the, fourth time on the show,
fifth,
something like that.
Sixth, something like that.
So good to have you in studio. I appreciate
likewise.
you making your time available.
Yeah, of course.
A lawyer, by the way, friend of the show. Also co-host of the Truth Expedition with Mark Bashofsky. Running the dials, as always, Mr. Deep State himself. Dawson, how you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing good. A little bit daunted with what's about to happen, but we're going to make it work, and it's going to be good. Enjoy the show.
Please leave us a comment. I'll have Gunner read the comments today if you want to interrupt us anytime, or our guests that we have coming from across the pond. And when by across the pond, I mean New Zealand. Like, isn't that the furthest from?
That's a hike.
It's like the furthest
flight.
Is Australia further? I don't even know.
A little further, yeah.
Is it a little further? Okay, so almost the furthest. If you want to interrupt us anytime, hit that Rumble Rant button, and we will read your comment live on air. We're brought to you by Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. If you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing that home. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com. You can also check their social media pages on Facebook and X. Excellent meme game. Great like-minded group of people, right? Very philosophically aligned with us. If you're pro-liberty, a libertarian, maybe even a strong conservative, maybe even a MAGA type. Debate's out there on that one. So go check out johngaltmortgage.com. Also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Before I bring on my guest from across the pond, Karl Eggers, who's a friend of mine from back in the Battles of Liberty, 2014, 2015 timeframe.
Ron Paul days.
Well, I didn't really know Karl during Ron Paul days, although I think he was a Ron Paul guy, but we were doing stuff with a group called Liberty Minnesota. So we fought some battles together in Minnesota, including legalizing Sunday liquor sales, which is amazing how long that took. But anyhow, there is breaking news here. Dawson, go ahead and pull up the A1 here. A Minnesota state senator got arrested for alleged solicitation of a minor. I'm going to read actually from the police report. And this is, by the way, a Republican state senator. Now, you know from this show, I don't subscribe to this whole idea we can't speak ill will of Republicans, because when Republicans vote like leftists or when they do things that creeps do, we'll expose them on this show, right? We also do the same thing with Democrats. We'd go both sides. In fact, in many regards, I think the two parties are very aligned on a lot of this crap. So anyhow, go ahead and pull that back up, Dawson. A 40-year-old Grand Rapids man is in custody today following his arrest for allegedly soliciting a minor for prostitution. Bloomington Police Department detectives communicated with the man who thought he was taking a 16-year-old female. On March 17th, talking to a 16-year-old female. On March 17th, the detective arranged to meet with the male at a location near the 8300 block of Normandale Avenue in Bloomington. The male, identified as Justin David Eichhorn, age 40, of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, was observed arriving in the area by pickup truck. Eichhorn was arrested without incident outside of his vehicle by uniformed Bloomington police officers. He was booked into the Bloomington Police Department jail and will be transported to Hennepin County Adult Detention Center. Felony charges of soliciting under 18-year-old to practice prostitution are pending from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Now, of course, this is alleged. He's got his day in court. Gunner, I can't imagine with the case that's presented to us, and this is breaking, by the way, this is probably 30 minutes before we went live, that this didn't actually happen, because it sounds like, do you call it entrapment? Entrapment seems like a bad term. Is it technically entrapment?
Well, I mean, I think that's where it gets tricky. I mean, if you look at what happened to Scott Ritter, I think he actually engaged in some similar conduct where he claims ignorance as to the age, but effectively he also claimed entrapment. Now, something like this, where this is a campaign, this is a sting operation. So I bet they're going to have all their ducks in a row in terms of procedure, reaching out to this guy, making sure he's confirmed the age of the minor before meeting. So we'll have to, again, wait for the facts to come out, but this seems pretty damning.
So, even if you get past the minor part, there's the prostitution part, which is also illegal, depending on what you think of that. I think we can all agree that you should not be able to have sex with a minor in this state, which is defined, I think it's 18, isn't it? I think it's 18 in Minnesota.
Under 18, right.
Under 18, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like Alabama where it's like 12. Just kidding. So that's one thing, but the other thing is, like, I almost put up his campaign page because, you know, there's nothing better than just exposing the hypocrites. But then I thought, I don't want to show his family. But he throws his family up there, children and wife, right on the front of his campaign page and quotes God. Well, what kind of godly man is soliciting, you know, sex outside of the marriage, right? Especially in this creepy way where, I mean, maybe if you're saying that he didn't solicit an underage person, the problem here is he didn't know she was underage, but he was soliciting sex. I can't imagine they completely made that up. This is all we have at this point. The guy is literally in jail, and apparently it just broke to people up at the Capitol. So this is a story as it's shown. And, you know, it's very interesting in a Senate, which now has a Democrat that's got a delayed trial for felony burglary. And in the House, how many Democrats in the House last year had DUIs? Dan Wogelman up in St. Cloud, and that one where he was chugging a bottle of vodka in the liquor store parking lot, and then got behind the wheel, and it was like a massive, it was like 1.8 or something like that. It was pulled over, and it was ridiculous. And then you got Brian Curran, whatever they goes by, I don't even know. Yeah, you have all these wonderful people up at the Capitol that are just breaking laws. But of course, there's pending felony charges right now up in the Minnesota Senate, which seemed to be a pretty big deal. So yeah, that's all the story we have at this point, but I'm sure you're going to learn a lot more about this soon. And by the way, the Senate's only a one-person majority by Democrats because they have someone waiting trial for felony burglary. But now, as you can imagine, this is going to be another big dynamic at the Capitol, and the dynamic of, well, you guys also have someone. So do the Republicans then say, well, let's wait for court. Let's not have him resign. You know, so then it comes down to, will the Republicans do the right thing and police their own people, unlike what the Democrats are willing to do? Or are they going to go, well, you know what? He's not going to resign because, clearly he needs his day in court too, right? So that dynamic is going to play out. The other thing that's interesting is his district is a solid conservative district. So if he resigns and then they have a special election, it's going to go Republican. And will it even make a big difference when currently the Democrats are in charge? So Republicans might do it anyhow because of that.
Well, I think they totally should. I mean, this is scandalous. It's sad for the state. And I think certainly Republicans should be holding this guy accountable. Once we determine the facts and it shows that this guy likely probably did this, we should hold him accountable.
Absolutely. All right. Today's show, oh, by the way, I want to say hi to Tucker91, Radtred, and Glenn Cotton, all in the comments section. Appreciate very much, guys. All right, so this is a subject I've been razzle dazzle there too. Well, good to see you guys. This is a conversation I've wanted to have for a while now. We actually reached out to a couple people that were never Trump Republicans like Arnie Carlson, former governor. I can't remember who else we invited back in October, just to kind of, I am kind of curious. I figure, I mean, you've known me for a while now, Gunner. I think I'm somewhat open-minded on this stuff. I'm a libertarian in terms of belief system, small L libertarian. I've never worked with the Libertarian Party directly. You know, I've never caucused with them or anything like that.
Sounds like a true libertarian.
What's that?
Sounds like a true libertarian.
Sounds like a real libertarian. There's only 57 of us out there, right? So, Trump is the most complex person I've ever seen in politics. It's not easy to pin him down. I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on the political person that Trump is without actually personally knowing the guy. I would reserve my final judgment for a guy like that until I finally meet him, especially when I see the way that the media treats him and how many lies they tell about him. With that being said, obviously not a perfect guy, not at all. And things he does piss me off. But when it really comes down to it, my intentions are to see actually the Liberty ball move down the field in a positive direction and to actually really see the swamp being crushed. And so in the end of the day, I will measure my Trump's performance on that metric and that metric alone, even if he says some mean tweets and does some other things. So Trump's first 2 months in office have been an interesting one. There's been some highs and there are starting to be some lows. But I want to bring on Karl because, Karl, we've known each other, I don't know, going back to 2014. We were involved in Liberty, Minnesota. Since 2019, you left Minnesota. You took your family to California. So you experienced COVID out there, which I think was the biggest threat to liberty in our lifetime. And then a year ago, I think it was, you actually completely left the United States with your family and moved to New Zealand, which is a gorgeous country, by the way. I've always wanted to visit New Zealand. However, they, in my opinion, got COVID way wrong, and that scares the crap out of me about that country. But seems like you're having a good time over there. We haven't really connected a lot in politics until all of a sudden you started coming on some of my Facebook threads and seem to have a very different view of Trump that I do. So let's just start there. Like, where do you think I get things wrong?
Where do I think you get things wrong?
Yeah.
In particular, I don't watch your show, to be clear, and because leaving the state of Minnesota and leaving politics was a good thing for my family, which is generally how I approach life now, not to get mired in the partisan bickering and pedophilia that goes on in oligarchy and all the partisan fun that you guys get to have on a daily basis. I decided that wasn't healthy for myself and my family. So I don't know what you got wrong in particular. We can talk about the cultural and political themes of Trump and how it affects liberty and how I think large groups of people get these issues wrong. But I can't speak for you specifically on what you exactly get wrong.
Okay, so I mean, I don't even remember what threads. Usually when someone wants to debate on Facebook, this is a lesson I learned 10 years ago. It's pointless. You don't do it. And usually it's people I don't know that well, so I really ignore it. The fact that you did it, I was like, oh, well, I don't want to just ignore Karl. I got a lot of respect for you. And then it just hit me. It's like, well, this isn't productive. Maybe you should come on my show and let's figure this thing out. So I don't even remember what particularly it was. Yeah. So what would you say is your biggest criticism? Because you obviously aren't ignorant to the fact there are libertarian-minded people like me, certainly that's worked with you in the trenches in the liberty movement, that maybe take a different approach to Trump than you do. And what is your approach to Trump? What are your feelings on him?
Yeah. No, that's fair. So I got back on Facebook like an idiot at the end of near the election.
Okay.
Because I wanted to, I left social media. Again, mental health and focus on my family and quality of life. I threw that out the window and I got back on Facebook to talk with you all. And to no one's surprise, it's been frustrating and stressful and mind-blowingly stupid.
Well, then get off Facebook, Karl. Get off Facebook and focus on your wife and your family.
Yeah, I've learned the lesson a few times. I told you I'm a masochist, so that's why I'm here for sure. No, but I don't care about labels. I know in the banner you said I'm a libertarian things. Maybe, and some things I'm a socialist and other things, according to some people. I embrace the state, which is a very odd thing to say for anybody, especially for you guys that live in the state that I would say is a single-payer state. Medicare is the largest health insurer in the United States, Social Security, et cetera. You guys, I would think, don't live in a free market state at all either. So people in glass houses, I would say, certainly. But anyways, regardless of label, I don't really care about
Karl,
that,
so
right?
do you feel like you are a socialist then?
Do I feel I'm a socialist? I think all parties get some things wrong. I don't subscribe to any political party per se.
But you would have.
The last two times.
Back when you and I were doing stuff in politics, you would have clearly identified yourself as a individualist or a libertarian, right?
Yeah.
Do you not feel like that's a correct term nowadays for you?
Well, to your point, seeing what other libertarians, in air quotes, have done to support Trump, I don't agree with a lot of what I think maybe you, but many, many others have said about why they support Trump and the things you're willing to accept in the guise of liberty, I guess, or freedom or something. I certainly disagree with that. So if that makes me a socialist, what a scary word, or not a libertarian, then so be it. I don't really care.
Let's get
and
past
again, I don't
Trump.
subscribe to the label.
Let's get past Trump. Let's just kind of level set here.
Yeah.
I don't care what your views are on Trump at this point. Then I care what are your views. If Trump didn't exist, do you still subscribe to the same libertarian views that you did back before? And I describe libertarianism as like the non-interventionist principle. Like you don't have a right to tread on someone's liberty or hurt them But you could live freely as long as you're not harming another individual.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there are baselines in those things that I certainly still agree with, the non-aggression principle, the do no harm, baselines in my morality over my worldview, not just my politics and things in this country. So certainly there are consistent things of you shouldn't harm other people. You should do the most good and the least harm to the most number of people you possibly can, especially when you involve the state, right? Especially when you involve the state who has the power and the authority to harm a lot of people and has, throughout all of human history, present tense included, harmed a lot of people. And so my foundation, my morality has not changed on that. And I do think that treating your neighbor like you want them to treat yourself is a pretty good thing you want to embrace throughout your life. And I certainly haven't wavered for that. And one of the first eye-opening things on Facebook for me was when I say, hey, I think people should be more decent and use more empathy, which I know is a scary word for you Musk fanboys out there, but empathy and critical thinking and all of those things I think are good things, and we should be more decent and be more empathetic to other people and use critical thinking all of the time, right? And I got pushback from liberty people, like, well, you're a socialist. If it makes me a socialist to be empathetic to other people, then so be it, right? I would rather be socialist if that's what is making me that. But the fact that you, and I think one of the biggest problems I have, again, beyond Trump, it transcends Trump. The cultural shift is this cultural war bullshit that I've seen in the last 10 years from largely you guys, right? Of the pushing culture war on each other, on people you don't understand or don't agree with or look different than or come from a different place than. And that certainly has made me recoil in horror of, hey, I thought you were a decent, empathetic person. It turns out you're not, because if you treat other people like this, especially using the state to reinforce division and reinforce boundaries and dictate our morality, largely in a Christian way, I don't agree with that, especially using state power. And it's funny to me, now that you guys have won federally, right, with Trump in office and with Congress, like, you're okay with using the state to reinforce those boundaries and to institute your worldview and your ideology, and to be corrupt and to get in bed with oligarchs and with the corporate America. And it's mind-blowing to me. And I think it's dangerous and scary. And that's part of the reason I left the country, to be fair. And again, I think just the focus on your neighbor and being empathetic, regardless of partisan label and whatever you want to call me or call your neighbor, so be it. But if you're going to be a jerk and be an asshole to other people, I don't want to subscribe to that.
Yeah, so much to take down there.
Another example, the former chair of the Libertarian Party, Big L Libertarian Party, has been called horrific things on Libertarian Twitter. Why should I support a group that says and does horrific things to other people because they disagree with their lifestyle or who they are, or what they think, right? I mean, the attacks on other people for who they are as people has been horrible, right? And for me to say that and to get pushback on that is kind of the problem, right? So for me to say, hey, we should be more empathetic to others, we should be critical thinking, or we should call spade a spade and say that's wrong of Trump or others to do these things, and to be like, oh, well, you're a socialist and you just don't understand, and you're not a libertarian anymore because you don't hate other people. Oh, okay. Then I think you've hung yourself on that. And I'm not speaking for you, Jake. I'm speaking.
Yeah,
general,
I mean, it sounds like you're talking to maybe a low IQ
yeah.
person when you're referring to that, because a lot of what you're saying I don't disagree with. So, and Karl, we know each other pretty well. I mean, we work together quite a bit. My general disposition in life is to work well with the community. I certainly have a great community over in the Stillwater area. Kids are very involved in sports. I try to keep politics out of it. Some people might be shocked about it, but I really try to keep my professional and private life different, because I actually think there is a need for people on the left. Those are usually the people that are personality-wise caregivers, which we need in our society. We also need warriors, which tend to be more on the conservative side. And then there's a whole mix of personalities that go all different ways, and that makes politics not so easy to understand. So I think there's a role for both. I'd prefer that fake conservatives and Democrats never control a budget. I would hope that, because they clearly can't do it. But I think there's a role for people, and I think it's just generally to be nice. My next door neighbor, one of my next door neighbors, only one. All the other ones seem to be doing well politically, but they had a Biden sign on in 2020. I couldn't disagree with them more on that. and but we're very neighborly because they seem to be very good people. So I have that approach just generally in life. Where that changes is when I'm dealing with politicians, and you and I knew it so well because our involvement together was with an organization called Liberty Minnesota, which had a scorecard. And we literally watched these guys lie to us about what they believed in and then did the exact opposite thing. And I'm like, well, if that's the world I'm maneuvering in my professional world of politics, which, like, again, I keep that out of my private life, then it's like I have to have a different approach. And I sometimes think of Donald Trump as a guy that understands that he's approaching a world of just really corrupt, bad people. And so maybe his approach is that now, he goes a little too far sometimes. Like, did you really need to say that about Taylor Swift? It's like, what was the point in that? But he's generally, in my opinion, he's targeting these.
This is not about mean tweets.
Yeah.
This is not. I think you're minimizing Trump's impact, and this is bigger than Trump. I don't want to focus on Trump per se. Like, we certainly can, but it's not about mean tweets. It's about using the state to deport people, to I agree with you on that. The press. To attack people, to attack physically and intellectually attack people because they disagree with them. Mahmoud Khalil, right? Like, because a legal immigrant disagrees with Trump on an issue, he's going to be arrested by plainclothes officers and deported. Like, this is not about mean tweets, Jake. I think you minimize the impact that Trump has, and this is kind of my point, right? If say we agree that Trump does 8% of things right, like, just assume that that's true, right? Which I would argue, but that means you have to accept the other 92%, right? And I would say that those aren't status quo kind of things, right? Those things of deporting legal immigrants and restricting the press and expanding our war and taking over the Gaza Strip, and not ending the wars. I'm waiting for somebody to end some war. Haven't seen any of that happen yet. But consolidating executive power, these are all regressive, backwards things that is moving our country to a place that I don't want to live in, which is why 2.5 years ago we left. For example, your neighbor had a Biden sign. Cool. Like, people are happy to share their opinions, for sure. I would think. Well, not in Trump's America, maybe not happy to share their opinions, but some people are. But
what was worse under Biden, though, right? Free speech was more to attack during Biden.
I would strongly disagree with that, but again, you're in the weeds. You live in the country. You're more in the weeds than I am.
Well, Action for Liberty literally lost our Facebook page, our presence online, because of the Biden administration going to Facebook and telling them they need to remove, groups like us.
I got banned from Twitter for saying that Biden was going to get rebound COVID for taking Paxlovid. That's certainly. I think that the free speech environment has improved slightly, but I do share your concerns.
Well, the billionaires like you guys now, huh? Yeah.
I do share your concerns.
They got you back on those platforms.
The techno state takeover, and I think that's where this conversation is really fruitful, because we obviously have criticisms of all governments and all parties. I think if I were to consider myself a libertarian and then look at the Libertarian Party and see people behaving poorly, I still would consider myself a libertarian. I would more try to stand up and say, those aren't our values. We're not racist. We don't want to deport people who are here legally. And so we want to stand up and enforce those values. And so, especially on the campaign trail, we've all been fooled before. But when you look at both sides of that, I want to end forever wars. I want to improve free speech, versus what we saw on the Harris-Biden side. There was a pretty clear solution there. Now, I'm not saying that we weren't duped, deceived, or otherwise. The honeymoon's over with Trump, and we're starting to see some of his true colors. Whether or not he'd be better.
Why are you surprised?
Well,
why is any of this a shock
I'm
to anybody?
Not, Karl.
You guys have said, like, oh, we've been duped for 10, 20 years. Like, we all have, that we thought a politician would do good, do the things that he or she said they would do. Whoops, we were wrong again. We were duped again. Yeah. What do you expect at this point, especially for a personality like Trump and the people he has around him, right? Like, of course this was going to happen. I gave you a benefit of a doubt in 2016 that you thought, well, maybe this guy talks differently, acts differently. I'll look aside from his personal flaws and say maybe he's the right kind of person we need in office. That was 9 years ago. There's no excuse anymore. Every day that went by since 2016 gives you less and less argument as a liberty-minded person, whatever that means, to say, yeah, this is good. I want to be included included in this group and I want to support this group. That was 9 years ago.
That's a simplistic.
I don't have much sympathy for, well, we were duped again. It was the honeymoon period's over. What did you expect, right?
Well, no,
he said he was going to do a lot of
That's
stuff,
such a simplistic way. That's such a simplistic way to look at it. It's like as if there was just a normal progression over those last 8 years, but it's like, no, it wasn't. We learned after he lost an election, which a lot of people believe was stolen, right? Yep. The burden of proof is on Trump to show how it was stolen. Yeah, but you know what you can't deny? It is. The burden of proof is on Trump to prove it, right? And I don't think he ever did. But you know what?
And he has yet to prove it. Yeah.
Right. But you know what's undeniable?
In court or otherwise.
Yeah, but you know what's undeniable is that it was rigged, right? Like many states changed their election laws without an act of the legislature. And we know that 51 intelligence officials came out saying that there was a fake story on this Biden laptop, which many people believe probably would have made the difference in the election. No doubt that the federal government tried rigging that election, okay? Then you get beyond that.
Why didn't they rig 2024?
Well, it's too big to rig, Carl. Too big to rig. It's a valid question.
I completely disagree.
Well, it's a valid question. But let me follow this trajectory here, why people arrive at this point.
Sure.
Then what you have is January 6th, okay? Which a lot of people, like myself included, thought it was despicable when we first watched it. And then over the years, you start learning more and more about federal agents undercover and January 6th and the treatment that these people got in the D.C. circuits courts. And it's like, oh, my God, I think my federal government actually did this purposely to entrap basically the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. So you learn more about that stuff, and then you really become hesitant about the government. And also in that time period, Trump loses, and then you see a vaccine mandate by the federal government. Essentially, people will lose their job if they don't comply with the vaccine mandate, which is clearly unconstitutional. Plus, as I mentioned before, these free speech threats. Then, Carl, and I mean, this is really important stuff and why people would arrive at a different point.
I agree.
Then you watch a former president of the United States have his house raided by the FBI, and you're like, holy shit, is the FBI going after against the former president? Then you watch 4 indictments, 90-some charges. Some of them are people clearly go, wait, are you serious about that? And then, by the way, none of them, other than the one in New York City, a beautiful place for them to finally get Trump, which really looks like that's what they were doing, plus the civil stuff against him. And then to top it all off, because he's still surging in the polls, he's doing well, we watch an assassination attempt, and we don't know anything about the guy that tries assassinating to this day. And then, that never happened since like Reagan in the 80s. It happens again. And this guy, if he doesn't point his muzzle outside the chain link fence, they wouldn't even found him. Do you understand why people don't just have by the way, and I forgot the other one. The guy who supposedly won the Democrat primary just all of a sudden got out of the race, 8 days after the assassination attempt? Like, don't you see how people don't arrive at a little progression? It like changed their worldview of how things are going, and then they go, God, maybe Trump is actually going to give us a chance at correcting this problem, which is the deep state.
It did. I agree with many of the things you said in terms of that. Those things happen, right? I would also agree with that. Those 8 years, those last 8 to 10 years, has changed people's worldview, including my own, right? In terms of, this is crazy, and I don't want to subscribe with people. I don't want to get to know and like people that believe in these ideas. I'm going to live the life I want to live with my family in a country that doesn't have these problems largely, except for maybe one or two. But largely and systemically certainly doesn't have the problems that the United States does. So it did change worldviews, and it did give people more information. And you should adjust your priors if you get new information, right? That if you think something's true, you get a new piece of information, you have to weigh that information to say, does that change what I think or not, right? I think that that's a healthy way to approach the universe, the life in general, right? And so when I see many of the things you said, I agree happen. But I would take opposite sides of, those could also shift people the other way of like, this guy's crazy and these people are crazy. And wearing a MAGA hat on March 18th, your time, 2025, and in a public place is crazy. And I'm sorry, Jesse's not here. That would have been fun to see the MAGA gear. But I'm the deranged one because I think, hey, people should be more empathetic and decent and not wear politicians' clothing all of the time. But but there are Trump derangement syndrome, and then you have people that I would consider in a cult.
See, I think
So anyways, those things are true. I think vaccine mandates is a really good example, right? Or I would even go to masks, right? And I don't want to discuss pros and cons of policy per se, but masks was a really good issue for me because there's a difference between should I do this thing because it could help somebody on my own voluntarily, right? It may inconvenience me, but should I do this? Or it's a different question of should the state force me to do it, right? Those are two very different questions. When I heard people, the former saying, well, I don't care, they're old anyway, it's no worse than the flu, masks don't work anyway. That was the problem to me. We can argue over should the state enforce vaccine or mask mandates. That's a very different question. Should you do it because it might be the right thing to do and you might help somebody and it's a minor inconvenience? Probably. That was my approach, and other libertarians thought so too. Just like, well, if it's a minor inconvenience to me, but it could theoretically save somebody's life or help an impact on that, I'm okay with that. I don't need the state to tell me to do something, right, to help another person, right, or theoretically prevent somebody else.
Well, that's where I think,
and I know you'll get all the anti.
Well, no,
but that's my point, right? There's a difference between treating people in the state.
And Karl, that's where things went downhill, and this is where I've been so critical of Tim Walz, is COVID should have been a unifying thing for our country, kind of like 9/11. Of course, then we unified behind endless wars, but it's like it should have been a unifying thing. We should be out there doing the same thing, but what he did and what so many other governors, and then, of course, what Biden ended up doing is using the state, and so then I had a problem with it. If someone wanted to put on a mask on their own volition, go ahead. I don't want the state telling me, especially since I know that the science isn't there. It's a useless thing.
No.
And that's the other thing is like they're not only mandating, they're mandating something that doesn't work.
No.
right.
By the way, I'm talking about cloth masks. We didn't have N95 mandates, which actually would have some utility.
Maybe.
They
Mark says they
mandated
don't have much.
useless cloth masks. By the way, but they said you couldn't use your
tell
shirt.
the entire medical industry, the entire surgical industry, not to wear masks anymore in the operating room.
That's apples and oranges there.
From going
that's
in,
because
not,
they're trying to
not like very small.
Well, do you know how COVID spreads?
Jake,
Well, it's airborne.
Well,
it's
we
not. It's
didn't
not
know at
through
the time,
saliva.
right?
So that's why they wear masks in surgical settings.
Jake, we've talked about this before though. Like droplets do carry the coronavirus too. So masks have a use. They're not 100% useless.
They
They're
have
like-
a use.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I certainly agree with that.
The margin of utility of a mask is so small that it's basically irrelevant. I mean, you could go to Dr. Michael Osterholm, the lead COVID guy for Biden, who would tell you that same thing, right? Actually, Fauci said the same thing too before it became somehow a political thing for him to say differently. So is it fair to say that you probably had a different view on
distrust of government?
What's that?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Was it safe to say?
No, like you come with this inherent distrust of government, right? Like throughout the years, like from day one since we've been working. And you said, well, the government shouldn't force us to do these things like get vaccinated, wear masks, tax us, things like that, right? Because the government is inherently inefficient, inherently corrupt, right? I would think that that's generally a way we approach politics generally. That well, it's this monolithic thing. Why is it any different now? Why are you giving Trump and not just Trump, but I certainly is much larger than Trump, but giving the authority to government to say they can, the executive and a small group of people can dictate, how the government is run and funded, and who is and is not included in these things, and also like who the state should allow, deporting people, certainly, criticizing free press, criticizing judges, not adhering to judicial orders at all, right?
Well,
none of this should be surprising.
That is a big problem. That's a big problem.
Yes, it is a big problem. It's more than a mean tweet, Jake. That's what I'm saying.
No.
So
I mean the judges. I mean that's kind of counter to your argument. Is judges have too much power, right? And so that's actually a reason why you go after him. But I agree with you on a lot of things.
Well, the Supreme Court. Well, Trump's Supreme Court gave him, forever immunity, right, from essentially everything he does while in office. I would say that that's a problem, yes. But that is the Supreme Court. So that's the country
Right.
you
Yes,
live
I
in,
agree.
right? Where the Supreme Court said the executive authority is above the law, and I would strongly and morally disagree with that presumption. That's a monarchical kind of approach.
I agree with you, Carl. And
that.
Yes.
But you're okay with. But your
No,
guy,
I'm not
your
okay
side
with
is
that.
okay with that. And so well,
no, I'm definitely not okay with it.
Why do your people wear his hat?
Well, it's not my people, obviously.
It's insane to me.
It's not my people. Like, my reasons for voting for Trump really was essentially in October, you really do have lesser two evils. It's not like someone's going to be polling at 2% and then all of a sudden they're going to pull it off, right? It's like, all right, so if I'm going to vote in this election, I'm either abstaining like I did in 2008, which I would argue McCain was equally as bad as Barack Obama. And sometimes I even think could have been worse than Barack Obama, even though Obama was terrible. So it's either I go with one of the two choices. I'm clearly not going to go Kamala, right? Or I abstain. And I also thought about what should I just throw one to RFK Jr., kind of a FU. But to me, it's like the reason going for Trump was a handful of things. Number one, not as big of a threat on free speech. Now, I agree with what you're saying about these Palestinian protests, and that really that's what pisses me off. And this is Trump's problem right now. And I've said this last week, is he had us with a lot of these early things like Doge. I mean, there's some executive orders I was disagreeing with, but a lot of these things I was like, all right. And then all of a sudden, well, now we're actually funding all the Doge things. We're throwing people, or kicking people out of this country, including a professor who disagrees with them on Gaza. I might agree with that person on Gaza. Like, we probably should allow Israel to massacre all these people in
doesn't
Gaza.
matter, right?
Right. So, but that was, clearly Kamala was really bad. Like, she was literally talking you on the campaign trail about policing misinformation. Plus, they had already done it. So, to me, that was a bad bet. So that was one reason. Number two is if Trump could actually end the war in Ukraine, like a massive problem, and I should say in Israel and Gaza, if he could do that, but especially Ukraine and Russia, wow, what a wonderful thing for peace down the road. Now, he seems to be fumbling quite a bit on that one, and he will be held accountable on that. But certainly the other side wasn't even talking about peace there. We have to defeat Putin. It's like, what are you guys, nuts? You want to kill all these innocent civilians so that you can hold Putin accountable? He's not losing this thing. He's not losing it. Right. So that was another reason. And then third thing is, there's probably a handful of other ones, but quite frankly, I actually thought, like, I kind of agreed with RFK Jr. and his, motivation to actually, try to solve some of these childhood obesity issues.
Right.
Let me give you a fourth one real quick, too. I also believe that there's a massive problem with the deep state, and Kamala clearly wasn't going to do about it, but at least Trump gave me some hope. Now we're at a position where I'm like, holy shit, are they actually going to do something? Are we really going to see the Epstein files? Are we really going to get JFK files? So I'm going to be critical of Trump when he breaks these promises, but Kamala offered no hope. So it's really just either abstaining or participating in it.
Well, and those arguments, and it's funny you say that, because you're taking, again, none of this should be surprising to either of you guys or anybody. I would say, like, whoa, why did I wanted Trump to fix the economy? Now he's raising tariffs, right? Well, that doesn't seem right to me. Well, yeah, that's what you get for voting for a leopard. You get your face eaten off, right? So, like, but these things, I will not agree with the premise that Trump and Kamala were equally bad, and Kamala's maybe worse, maybe on some things. But I think the point that you're making is lesser of two evils is exactly what we heard in 2012, right? Where, well, you got to vote for Mitt Romney because he's better than Obama. That's what we were fighting against. That's not good enough.
Right.
Right. So I absolutely will push back on Trump's not great, but he's better than the other guy. Well, that's not good. That doesn't mean lesser of two evils is still evil. So that's what I did, is I abstained. I didn't vote in 2020. I didn't vote in 2024 because I think both sides are corrupt and horrible, and I don't think represent me. And I think it was way better to get out. I thought it was irrational to stay and to try to fight it and to try to push back on. Certainly, I would say both sides have crazy lunatic people, certainly on Facebook.
Yes.
But in terms of the political thought, the right wing absolutely does. I lost my mom to QAnon. So to see stuff like that happen, and to see the cognitive dissonance, of like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? Like, this is not reality.
Right.
And so that for me, the answer wasn't, well, I'll just have to accept that because Trump's maybe better on a few issues than Kamala, which, Trump promised to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours before the election. So I'm still waiting the very long 24
Well, the other
hours.
side didn't even
But
promise to do it.
regardless,
That's the problem. Like,
Sure.
Yeah, like
Sure. And I would
if
agree
it
with
takes him
peace is
2
good.
months,
Ending
far
war is
better than
good.
the alternative.
Yeah.
So in 2016,
What I'm saying is it
I voted
doesn't
for
have
my
to be this
parents.
way.
In 2016, I voted for my
Yeah,
parents.
there you go.
And then I saw what Trump did during his presidency. I saw him go to North Korea. I liked that. It was the hottest economy I've ever had in my life. And I also saw Russiagate and other things that led me to believe that the deep state was opposed to him. And so I have a huge issue with the deep state. They've lied us into wars. They propagandize us. They lied about COVID, 9/11, all these things. And they're probably likely behind QAnon, right? I think that that's an intelligence operation. So I'm upset with the state. I'm not upset with necessarily any single politician. But when you look at moving forward, how do we move forward? That's what led me to support Trump this round. Now, it's kind of like a forced marriage. You can either get married to Kamala Harris, who was obviously a puppet, or Trump, who is a mover and a shaker, right? So the actual issue with Trump, to me, is I'm pushing forward, but just like when you get married, your wife, and the relationship may not be perfect and it needs work, okay? This relationship with Trump, the honeymoon's over and it needs work.
It needs a lot of work.
And I share so many of your same criticisms. We should be allowed to have free speech on Gaza. It doesn't look like he is ending the war in Israel. It does seem like he's gung-ho with Greater Israel.
Right.
But so what are your thoughts on Trump being a Putin puppet?
Well, certainly he's much closer to Putin than Biden or anybody else.
Why is that a bad thing?
I think to continue your analogy of marriage,
Yep.
You married somebody that's been divorced multiple times, that has been photographed with Epstein, that has all these flaws. You intentionally got married to this person. Say, well, I can change him. That I feel is probably not a logical, reasonable approach, right? Like, well, his fifth marriage, he'll figure it out and work it out, and now he'll do the right thing. The other 4 times were mistakes. I know he's been photographed with Jeffrey Epstein for 20 years, but he's changed. He's different. I'm against those things. Now he's better, or I can change him, or he's different. That's a you problem, man. You get what you deserve on this because he's shown you who he is. Throughout decades, but certainly since he's been in political limelight. So I would definitely, using that analogy, I'd say, yeah, that's the problem. You guys expected something to be different when we haven't seen any different from him. And knowing who he is,
it's not necessarily different. It's better than the alternative. And so that's where, like, right. I think it's tricky to say, like, even Jesse's going to have some criticisms of Trump. But we are for this more, nationalist libertarian movement. And so that's where we can see, the pushing forward. Kamala Harris would be an absolute step back. But there may be things that would be better about a Kamala Harris government. She'd be full on with Ukraine. She'd be still full on with Israel, Gaza. She's not in control of that situation. So we have someone who either is a puppet or someone who could be a mover and a shaker. And I agree that he's been photographed with Epstein, that he's surrounded himself with questionable people. So that is the conundrum that we're in. And so I think that any legitimate criticism of Trump should be broadcast.
Yeah, and I would certainly agree with that. But again, like, I would get to the point of, like, even if we assume that he's right on 8% of the issues and he's moving the ball forward in our preferred direction 8% of the time, that means you have to accept 92% Christian nationalism, xenophobia, and corruption, and more deep state, right? So, but now the deep state is concentrated in Elon Musk and a handful of a few 20-something-year-old hackers who have access to all your personal information. But that's fine. Just not this, like, weird nebulous shadow government, right, thing. And none of this is saying that government is good and hasn't done bad things and isn't corrupt. Like, we agree that government is bad and has done these things for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? Power has corrupted people when they get authority, right? But now it's different because MAGA has power and he'll do the right thing with this power. Oh, wait, he did it, and he's hurting people, and he's abusing this. Another example of this is I recently pointed out the fact that Trump was reading a Tesla sales sales pitch, right? And with Elon Musk, the saying, you should buy a Tesla, and the Model X is $100,000, and the Model Y is. And I said, this is corruption,
so dumb,
right? Like this is using it is so dumb to certainly to agree with that. But like this is corruption. Like the president shouldn't be hawking the company of his administration, his buddies, right? His billionaire buddies. Like this is bad. And to get the pushback I got, which was eventually, well, Trump didn't personally benefit. Well, corruption, it benefited Elon Musk or Trump to use his authority. Well, it's not illegal, okay, but it's unethical at very least, right? Like it doesn't have to be illegal to be corrupt. Well, everybody does it as part of the game. They're all corrupt. Oh, okay, true. That is true. All of these people are corrupt and have been for thousands of years. Why are we accepting it now? Why are we accepting that that's okay for Trump to do that? Because everybody does it. And once you get in office, you get corrupt. Well, that's the problem. And what I want to express is it doesn't have to be that way, right? And smart, empathetic people who use their brain say, no, that's not good enough. If I agree with Trump on 8% of things, cool. I would like to end the Ukraine war as well. Peace is good. That's great. But I'm not going to accept the 92% of the garbage that he does, which is more than mean.
Okay,
more
but
than
you
he
keep
says
going
weird
back to
things.
this number.
You can't always believe what he says.
Carl, you keep going back to this number, 8%.
Yeah.
But hold
Sure.
on. Maybe this is the root of our issue is that's really your number is 8% versus 90% bad.
Yeah, well, I take that from, so Tom Woods had some talk about this, and one of my old libertarian friends sent me a Tom Woods podcast from January, who made a similar argument of why Tom Woods is supporting Trump, and Jack Hunter was on that as well, of like, well, he's really good on a percentage of things, right? 8 is just a number I'm using, right? He's really good on a percentage of things, but I disagree with him on the other percent, or on a lot of the other things he does are bad. That's my point. I'm not saying 8% is the actual number. My point is, if you take 25%, but the 75% other stuff is status quo, normal, he doesn't change anything else, then yeah, I can see your argument that he's keeping things status quo with 75%, but moving forward with 25%. However, I disagree. I think that 75% is actually regressive, right? And there are things he's doing which are making us worse, which we haven't seen in previous administrations, including Biden's, which are a continuation or an aggression of those policies that harm actual people, harm citizens, harm legal immigrants, harm illegal immigrants. I know it's not fun to be empathetic to illegal immigrants, but they deserve empathy as humans too, right? But do things that are extrajudicial, extra constitutional in a way that, well, this is bad. The executive shouldn't be doing these things to harm people. And I would disagree with it if and when it was Biden and Obama and George W. Bush and else. Trump doing it and making it worse in many cases is a problem. And I will not accept that just because he's right. I agree with him on X percent of the issues.
Well, that's the ultimate conundrum for leftists in this country. I like to remind them very frequently is every time you give more power to the federal government or to the executive branch, it's going to go against one of your enemies, right? You're not going to win every election. And in this case, literally Hitler's got it now, right? It's like, so why don't we just unify in the idea of, hey, how about less power to the federal government, right? How about less power to the executive branch of the President of the United States? But they don't want to come that way because really they're opposed to it. The way I look at this, Carl, and it's interesting because if we would have had this conversation, I think I reached out to you last month where I was in the honeymoon period and just loving some of the things I'm seeing, like Doge was giving me real hope that we might see the government shrink. And now I'm like, oh, wait a second. Were you just lying to us? Like you just funded all the Doge and only Thomas Massey was willing. Yeah, I know, right? Massey and Rand Paul were the only one to like actually state this. By the way, we didn't, this passed after our last show. Rand Paul literally had an amendment on the Senate floor that, we would take all the cuts that Doge found and put him into the CR. And only, I think, 23 Republicans voted for it. So it was opposed by all Democrats and Republicans. Like, wait, so at some point, you're just full of shit, right? And now I don't know if Elon's legitimate about it and he's just falling on deaf ears, which is Washington, D.C., or he wasn't even being sincere about it, but it's like at some point I'm going to call out your shit. But anyhow, the way I look at it is if you were talking to me a month ago, I'm going to take a waiting, okay? Trump has legitimately solved or at least made a huge dent in the problem we had on our southern border, which was a massive problem under Biden.
Yep.
That's a huge issue. Not as much up in Minnesota. It does actually trickle up to Minnesota, but it was a massive issue in our country. And he is, I think, illegal border crossings are down like 95% or something like that. So that's a huge thing, especially when you find out that you have military-age men coming across the border. CBS 60 Minutes did a segment on Chinese people coming across the border. It's like, at some point when military-age men from a communist country are coming across their border, and let's talk about, Muslim extremists, like that's an issue. That's a security issue, right? So he's done a good job on that. Certainly, if he could solve the Ukraine issue, I think these things have a larger weighting than an executive order. I'm just trying to think of an obscure executive order that I don't necessarily agree with.
Increasing capital punishments. Increasing the use of capital punishment was one of the executive orders. So you're good with that?
No, I'm not.
That's the state killing people.
Right.
So that's one of many. I think he had 80-something executive orders. That's one of many to say the government should use the capital punishment more often in cases that don't necessarily need capital punishment. So in the killing of police officers and other things, the state should kill people.
Well,
right?
I mean, the reason I put that...
well, you have to accept that. Yeah, with this, like that's the mentality. I don't know if he talked about that in the elections. I don't know if people knew that he's going to do that, but that's not surprising that Trump would do something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's opposed to it. By the way, I voted Trump knowing he was wrong on some issues, like actually the most important issue to me, which is national debt, which there was no one good on that. So I mean, I knew I went into this thing knowing he was bad on it. Is that our screen on the show?
Yeah, I'm getting it back up.
What's that?
I'm getting it back up.
Oh, okay. We just lost our visual, I guess.
He's still there.
Carl. Okay, I got him back. So I knew he was bad on some. Yeah, first world problems here. Actually, we're trying a new split screen. I was like, I want to see Carl at the same time, so we're trying the new split screen. If you get like Rumble Studio or any of these studios that are online, they're just natural. But we have a TriCaster switcher, so it's a new thing that we had to program in. What do you got, Dawson?
The Billy22 in the comments says, "Is this guy Dawson's cousin?"
No, Dawson's just straight up a leftist. Dawson's apolitical.
I think that's a compliment. I don't know you, Dawson, but I'll take that as a compliment.
No, you don't want to take that one as a compliment, Carl. Run far away from that one. No, Dawson's Dawson's apolitical. I think he likes to play devil's advocate a lot. But the other thing is Dawson's Jewish, so we have to take everything he says with a grain of salt. Where's that gold, Dawson? Where is it?
I'm Jewish.
He's what?
He's Jewish.
So
Oh.
we take what I say.
I'm joking.
but-
Carl, tell me you didn't lose your sense of humor. My God, Carl, come on.
Yeah.
Not
I
only
mean,
that.
I would have a sense of humor about it if, one, it was funny, or two, like if there weren't actual real anti-Semites in your party, right?
I know, but we can't let...
The roots of QAnon and many of these conspiracy theories are based in old anti-Semitism.
I know. That's why the joke is funny, though, Carl.
Do those things.
That's why it's so funny,
yeah.
as if I'm one of those idiots that just assume by a class of people they're all bad and they all know where the gold's at.
But what's my nickname here?
What's that?
What's my nickname here?
Deep State Dawson. Yeah, that's the other thing. You got to understand it. Because Dawson told me once, he's like, I kind of want to work for the CIA. I go, that's what everyone that works for the CIA said. I once wanted to work for the CIA. No, I mean, like, that's the other thing is, I think in the world of politics, it's just like people, and this is what TDS is, it's like, oh, people cannot see some humor in things. And I think that's a good thing for us to at least be able to joke. Like, everyone, like, literally, like, one of the greatest comics out there and is doing great things for comedy, Tony Hinchcliffe, like, literally got roasted for telling a joke. By the way, a joke that was kind of misunderstood by people, by the way, but obviously they were trying to get a cheap political win. It's like, my God, can't we have a little bit of fun? Especially if you're a comic, like, your whole idea is to, like, push the envelope. Now, maybe Trump shouldn't have that comic at his rally. It's not the smartest idea, if you just look into who Tony Hinchcliffe is. But it's like, we can't, like, people coming after a comedian for being a damn comedian. It's like, it's kind of funny, in the sense that we can't be so sensitive to this stuff. In many ways, it should neutralize some of these really...
For sure. Saturday Night Live was really guarded in PC for a couple years. They have gloves off again, and it's quite funny. So I think we should be trying to reassert that free speech and appreciate each other's differences. But okay, so let's get back to this. So I think we can't reiterate this enough that when I didn't vote for Trump for the first round, but now voting for him again, it's because I see woke, Ukraine, World War III on one side, and then I see on the other side someone who's speaking to the issues. Now, he's speaking to the issues. Honeymoon's over. We like some of the stuff that we see. I'm not opposed to tariffs. We have them in place already. And so if they improve the situation, good. That's what should be happening. I'm okay with securing our southern border, especially if we stop the CIA mucking around. I was about to swear, but I didn't. In South America. I mean, that's exactly what I mean. So if it's like a full package there on some issues, I'm on board with it. My main concern and how I got started in this is studying Abrahamic eschatology and trying to look at World War III, the holy World War III that we're going to see in the Middle East. And I'm almost a single issue voter on that, right? Almost. But what do I see with Trump and what do I see with the folks around him? I see an escalation there, a de-escalation in Ukraine. So what I want to do is not just say, look at the people in the party. Some of them are racist. There's anti-Semites everywhere, right? And so that's not good. We should call them out. But I'm not going to not participate in a political movement just because there might be some anti-Semites lurking in the corners. I'm going to try to improve the situation here in this country. And in doing so, I want free speech. I want to be able to support the Palestinians who are protesting on campuses, right? I want to do that.
But how is supporting Trump at helping you in those regards?
Well, that's just it. You were talking earlier about this is a marriage who someone who was divorced a bunch earlier, right? This is a forced marriage. I get Kamala Harris or I get Trump, right? So I'm going to choose one or the other with their defects. And so I am fully aware of the stuff he's pulling, and I don't like it. And so if you turn on virtually every news source now, most people are speaking out against this. It's actually just the couple people around Trump that are telling him it's a good idea. We don't need to, release the Epstein files. Yeah, we'll give you the Kennedy files, but we're going to redact the heck out of them first. Yeah, that's a huge problem. But what I see is transparency and some attempt in discourse to improve the situation versus none of that on the other side. But there are situations where I'm going to accept a legitimate criticism of Trump. I've heard a few so far.
No, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and again, none of what I'm saying is saying, well, Biden and Kamala would have been a million times better. Like, I'm not arguing that point, right? I think they're wrong about a lot of things too, which is why I didn't vote for either of them. So I know I'm a socialist according to some people, but I didn't vote for either of them. I abstained from the system, right? I think that either choice is evil and is wrong, and I would argue that Trump is doing a lot worse things than I think a status quo Biden administration would have done.
Really?
That being said, neither of them represented me.
Like what?
I'm curious on that, Karl. What would that be?
I don't think they would. I don't know. But I mean, all that Trump has done so far has weaponized the deep state or the executive against people he doesn't like, right? Through freedom of press, through executive orders, through the judicial system.
Am I missing a freedom of press issue that
impeach judges?
Well, hold on. Impeachment is that's a legitimate act. That's a legitimate way. No, it is. You can impeach judges. It doesn't mean that it'll because they have to be convicted.
I understand there is a mechanism to do it.
Right. So,
but he wants that because the judge ruled against him. Right?
Yeah. Well, they're ludicrous. I mean, activist judges is a real problem in the country. That's a fair call.
Like the Supreme Court.
What's that?
The conservative activism of the Supreme Court. The conservative activism of the Supreme Court is better than the liberal activism of anybody else.
Well, I would
look
at it as
the Supreme Court saying that Trump is immune, as the executive is immune from rule of law. Forever.
Well, did you listen? Did you read that? Did you read that judgment? I mean, or the opinion on that? And did you listen to the arguments?
I
literally brought up in court
recently.
Literally brought up in court. I want to say Alito. I think it was Alito, or maybe it was Gorsuch that asked, "What about Obama? The Obama administration bombing? Was that Syria? Where was it? Where
lots of places.
Yeah, he killed an innocent 16-year-old. Yeah, I know. It's kind of hard to keep track of where he's bombed. But literally, it was a drone strike that killed a 16-year-old, a son of alleged terrorist. But he was an American, right? So that was literally brought up in court. So they arrived at that viewpoint because of the standard that would have to be applied to both. Now, I tend to be in agreement with you, Karl, maybe Obama should be held guilty of killing an American citizen, because you can't go out in the street and do it, but as long as they're overseas and in an unannounced drone strike, that's okay. So it's a very complex issue. You're trying to make it seem a lot more simple, and it's all about Trump. It's not all about Trump.
Well, where has Trump just reinitiated armed conflict? What country have we started bombing in the last week?
Yes, in Yemen. Yes, and I have massive issues with that, for sure.
Yeah. So again, the point isn't that Trump is any different. It's more the same. To expect that all these things would have changed, that it's much better, and I'm okay with a few things I disagree with him on because he'd be much better in other ways. Oh wait, he's not as good as I thought he was. That all should have been predictable, right? Especially knowing who he is and who he's been and who's he surrounds himself with. But also the content, the substance of his speech. So saying, well, those things are harmful to personal liberty, to economic liberty. Deporting legal immigrants because you disagree with them and they committed no crime. How is that a libertarian president?
It's
right?
definitely not.
I strongly disagree with that.
Totally disagree with Trump.
Economic liberty. How are tariffs supporting anyone's economic liberty? Oh, we've always had tariffs. Yeah, sure. That doesn't make expansion and increasing tariffs on Canada. Why are we even? What's the point of tariffs on Canada anyway? But why are we expanding the use of tariffs as a trade weapon? How is that a libertarian president? That is a nationalist, authoritarian way to solve problems. And that's use of the state to dictate what we can and cannot do and who we can and cannot interact with. And what is right and what is wrong morally in terms of his use of dividing people domestically as well. So I don't see how bringing people together or how any notion of inclusion or coming together around these things is in any way connected with the reality of a Trump presidency, unless you're a Christian nationalist or a xenophobe, then maybe.
Okay, we got a break for a Rumble rant. You want to read that there, Mr.
Failed candidate. I'm not fooled just yet. Karl may be a TDS Democrat. I'm still unconvinced
to that,
at this
Karl.
point. Karl, I'm still unconvinced because, again, I agree with some of your criticisms, but I still want to, pick certain things apart. Like,
well, hold on. It's part of the Rumble rant, so respond to the Rumble rant by failed candidate.
I've never worn any paraphernalia, hats. I've never flown a flag of any politician. Have you guys?
Well, Ron Paul.
Royce
Paul,
White.
sorry, I'll take that back. I did Ron
Kennedy.
Paul. Nobody since Ron Paul have I flown the flag, or maybe I voted for a Libertarian in 2016, I guess, Gary Johnson. But
yeah,
I've never worn Gary Johnson gear. I've never worn the hat. Certainly in non-election times. Have any of you guys, I would ask the crowd, worn MAGA or Trump or Biden? Maybe there's some Biden people that wear Biden gear and paraphernalia. I would consider that a little deranged myself, to wear the clothing that personally profits a politician, wear the clothing 24/7 for some people outside of election years and election periods. I would consider that pretty deranged as well. So no, I'm not a Democrat. And any notion that I have Trump derangement syndrome, I would ask you to look in the mirror.
What do you think Trump's motivations are? Tell me who you think Trump is. Can you see good in Trump at all?
Greed. I mean, in Trump himself, I don't think so. Right? Like I don't know the man. I don't know if any of us really do. Even if the people that do, I would say, have been fooled by him, as his previous cabinet certainly was. The many people in his previous cabinet who know him better than any of us do have strongly come out against him, right, and called him a fascist and other things. So I don't know what motivates him besides greed and selfishness and narcissism and things like that. I don't know what else would motivate him. I don't think he's an ideologue. I don't think he has a principled bone in his body. I think he's willing to go with the thing that gets him the most power and authority and money at the time, regardless of who it may or may not hurt. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, besides those things, I don't really think he has many redeeming qualities from what I can tell. And certainly, again, to my original point of like, if you really care about other people and you're empathetic and you want to treat other human beings the way you want them to treat you, you wouldn't say the shit Trump says, right? Like commonly, frequently, right? I'm not saying every word he says is wrong or is incorrect or is harmful, but you wouldn't say and approach the life in the way that Trump does if you do actually care about other human beings. You approach it from a very different perspective, that You are the smartest guy in the room, and you get to control what people say and do. And anybody who disagrees with you is deranged, because clearly you're the best and you're the smartest, and you have the most money. And anybody who disagrees with you should go to jail or should leave the country.
Okay,
right?
this is
Either
where I want to push back
voluntarily
on
in
you.
my case, or involuntarily in other people's case.
This is where I want to push back on you, Carl. So there, and I don't know Trump. I've never met Trump. Okay, but certainly it seems to me that he's well regarded by some of the people that work for him. A lot of the people that work for him, and some of the people that worked with him outside of Washington D.C.
Yep.
Which maybe that's the problem, right? And so it seems to me that he navigates that world in a different way than he navigates the world of politics. And for that, I understand, because, you know, there's a conception of who I am in the world of politics in Minnesota. And I would say more of my enemies are on the right, the right, as you know very well, Carl, right? Because we would expose these people for being liars. And so I usually get more of the wrath from the right, because what are we doing? We're exposing them to their supposed base of the supporters. But it's like, the reason I do the approach politics the way I approach is because I know who we're dealing with. I mean, we opened up the show. I'm sure yesterday, if I said anything ill will about Justin Eichhorn, even if I talked about his voting record, which is a rhino voting record, we would get a lot of condemnation. And it's not that I knew Justin Eichhorn, you know, allegedly solicited a 16-year-old for sex. It's just that I know that's the type of people I'm dealing with. And that's why I act the way I do in politics, because I'm dealing with these corrupt, bad individuals all the time. And so I really don't mind.
Including Trump.
Right, yes, in many regards. And I've said some bad things about Trump over the years. And if he doesn't show up and do the things he said he's going to do, which he seems to be declining right now, that wrath will be used against Trump. But my point is, when you say something like, well, the way that he treats people, it's like, I actually don't have a problem when he treats the lying corporate media the way he does, when he treats these corrupt politicians the way he does. Yep. I don't have a problem with that. I'm actually glad someone's finally saying something about these terrible individuals. Now, if he goes and says something about, you know, people, because I almost look at it, it's like a game, and these people are chosen to be in the game. But if he goes outside of that game, clearly Trump shouldn't have said that stupid thing in 2016 about the Gold Star mom. That was a dumb thing to say. So it's not that you're not saying some valid things, but the majority of this heat is, and by the way, that person did enter in the political game, obviously, you know, being part of the Democrat Party, but it's like, at some point, Trump needs to understand that there is some lines, but for the most part, it's directed towards the people that are in this game.
Well, one of the things that I'll push back on was a lot of it he does target towards the lying corporate media and stuff like that. But then you have, like, they're eating the cats and the dogs. None of those people, I don't think, deserved any of that. We still haven't seen any proof of any of it happening. That's the part where, I mean, I pushed back hard on the show before. We don't have to rehash it, but I didn't like that.
All right, let's go to the Rumble rant we got.
So I think coming here illegally is wrong. Remember when people had to be sponsored or prove they can support themselves? Now it's become so normalized, but it's illegal to still, but it's illegal is still illegal from right T.
Yeah. Do you think he's wrong about, you know, shutting down the border and stopping illegal immigration?
I don't know about the specific policy prescriptions. I think for Canada, for example, I think but yeah, I mean, I think the discussions over legal versus illegal immigration are very different. I would also point out that his harming legal immigrants and American citizens, both through speech and through state power, is problematic as well, right?
So you keep saying this thing about harming, like you say harming media. Am I missing a story here that I'm not privy to? What has he done against the free press?
Well, certainly he's kicked out press. He's called lying media, right? Calling all the, excuse me, not all, but many of the mainstream media press is lying and corrupt. But One American News and Fox News, I thought Fox News was bad, right, in 2020, but now they're good. But, you know, picking his media outlets for the ones that favor him over others who may or may not favor him, right? But certainly outlets like the Associated Press and Reuters, which are generally pretty broad, right?
Carl, you really aren't paying attention to.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not paying attention to those
they're
ones.
all against you. Got it.
The hells are.
But think about it.
Don't
But One American News is the objective.
Well, I did say that. Yeah. No, you're subscribing to something I did not say.
So they're not objective either.
They're not objective. Of course, yeah.
Support.
Well, no, yeah.
Fox News. Like, how is that?
No, you're making a decent point there, but Is there not any accountability? Like, there's not endless media. I mean, how many media outlets are there in this country? Technically, legally, we are a media outlet. Truth Hurts News. Like, do we just automatically get access to the White House?
No, but people that had longstanding access, right?
Well, hold on,
have been kicked out
so
in
once they've
favor
had
of One
longstanding
American News
access,
and things like that.
But if they've had longstanding access, they're just in there. They're grandfathered in there.
If you have a track
even if they
record?
continue to perpetuate lies and propaganda, like there's no accountability here.
But I guess what's the problem of shedding any press, pro, con, or objective, if you want to say that, right? What's the problem of shedding any light on Trump? The transparency.
No,
Why would you kick out
no
somebody if you
problem
think
with
they're
it.
not going to?
I think the real issue is like, okay, so I'm happy that there's a CNN office gone out of the Pentagon. I'm glad they're ousted from the Pentagon. I think if there's any media like MSNBC, CNN, NPR that work with the State Department to actively propagandize people, and Trump calls that out, that's different than saying, I don't like you, you're lying about me. But actually calling out propaganda is awesome. So if they're going to say, you've been propagandizing people, you're lying about what I have to say every time, I'm okay with that, for sure. For sure.
I mean, it gets back down to your trust of authority and your trust of the state, right? I mean, Elon Musk, I think in January, said, well, what happens when you're wrong about cutting something or about an agency or about outcomes that Doge has been frequently wrong about what they've cut and how much they've cut and who it affects and things like that. And Elon Musk, not incorrectly, said, well, I'm not going to be perfect. Call me out when I'm wrong, all those things. Well, but you trust these people. The point is you can't trust them, right? But you're giving this authority, this deference and this authority to government, is saying, well, we don't want certain people to call them out because we think they misconstrue the truth. What we want is Fox News and right-wing oriented outlets to take their seat because we think they're better at giving us the truth.
No,
I guess
it's not right versus left. It's transparency. For sure.
Okay, then why wouldn't the more outlets, like the better, right? Why are you saying that some shouldn't be allowed in the room and some shouldn't be allowed to cover Trump? And again, this is more than just who gets to sit in the White House press briefing room, right? It's way bigger than that, right? Certainly, it's Trump's relentless attacks through truth social and other things on who is right, who is wrong, who's lying, who's corrupt. And I think that's a common tactic of authoritarian. I think it's a common tactic of an authoritarian, right?
Yeah, but it also could be a tactic of someone trying to. It could be a tactic of someone trying to shed truth to a industry full of lies and propaganda, which is certainly what the MAGA universe believes in. Which I'm conflicted because I do see both sides of the coin, but clearly they are liars and full of propaganda, right? It does work two sides because you bring in certain sources that are going to just, I mean, I've seen it, throwing softballs at them. It's like, well, what good are you doing? You're just trying to prop it up. But one thing that just struck me what you said.
All right, so tell me this. What would be an objective outlet to you guys that is an objective way to approach Trump, capable of shedding light on the truth and willing to hold Trump and his administration accountable? Who would be an objective news source?
That's just, there isn't just one. You need a wide gambit of ideologies and thought. So, I mean, I'll listen to Democracy Now!, right? Because I want information.
So, right. So there's different ways to approach a topic, right? Different perspectives.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So how is a different perspective, left, center, right? How are different perspectives wrong when certainly the media that Trump prefers is far in terms of ideology, but much of the media he prefers is on the right side, and he doesn't want to talk to the left because they're all the lying, corrupt, elite corporate media, which I don't disagree with. There's a significant problem in corporate media and propaganda.
But he still allows most of them in the White House. I think you got a great point if he literally kicked out all the left-leaning ones. Right. He hasn't done that. But there's certainly, literally, the AP guilty of... What's that?
That's good, though. To your point, isn't that good? Isn't that good, though? I loved Russia today.
Well,
that was one of my
has
favorite
a place in there, too.
Outlets.
I mean,
before they banned
it.
I thought you had a problem with propaganda. I thought your problem was propaganda.
When Jesse Ventura and Chris Hedges and all of these, I would say, legitimate journalists go in and criticize U.S. foreign policy, I'm okay with that, as long as, that's just it, is people's BS detector has put some of these folks out. Rachel Maddow isn't as popular as she was. There's a slew of MSNBC hosts that are gone because people are tired of being lied to. So absolutely, we're voting with our eyes. And I think Trump has picked on to that to a degree. Obviously, again, I don't want RT out. I don't want Amy Goodman out. I want all of the information that I can get. But as soon as I detect it's BS, I'm out. CNN, MSNBC, they have a lot of trust to regain with me. I used to listen to NPR all the time. That's state BS. So that's where, like, I'm still ensconced in the Libertarian Party because I believe in the values. I'm going to criticize the people that I don't like. But as we go along, I want to take this issue by issue. I don't like activist judges, whether they're right on the left, but you can't call someone an activist judge just because you disagree with what they're saying. You have to pick apart what they're doing. Like if Trump is trying to deport criminals, okay. If we're trying to institute a tariff
using
on
the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to say Venezuela
because
is
a judge wouldn't uphold the
we
law,
can do that.
so he has to circumvent or go around and use another law that he has under his authority.
Wait, what's wrong with using a law from 1798?
One of the sedition acts. He's saying that a state actor is invading us, therefore he can detain and deport people who are suspected of corroborating with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if their state isn't taking it back, so like if El Salvador isn't taking folks back, that's the justification he's using.
We are talking about illegal aliens, aren't we here?
Yeah.
I believe so, but Trump is using powers from 1798 to say Venezuela is invading the United States as a foreign actor.
Hold on.
That's what Stephen Miller is.
His whole office is based. Hold on, his whole office is based off a Constitution that's from 1787. What's your point here?
Sure. That's true. Well, where in the Constitution does it give the government, the executive, the authority to say a foreign actor that we're not at war with is actually invading us? Therefore, we can use the state to detain
if you're
people.
coming across our border illegally, I don't know what else
there were legal immigrants. There were illegal immigrants in the group that they detained as part of that. Is my understanding.
Then that's a separate issue. Obviously, if there's a legal process that was. Well, hold on. We got
to rumble around here. We got to read it.
Venezuela is invading the United States.
Time out. Life is good. Okay, it was getting a little heated and negative. Life is good. Cheers, everyone. And again, this is a respectful debate. Carl, I want to come visit you in New Zealand. Okay, but this is a respectful debate, and I especially appreciate folks who come from a libertarian perspective that are saying, "Look, I don't like this technocracy. I don't like the people that Trump have surrounded themselves with." I'm saying the same stuff. I'm on board with that. Right. And I want this nuance in the discussion, but I want to pick apart each thing. I don't want to say he's a Putin puppet and RT is bad. I like peace. I like Russians. I don't know. I want there to be global trade. We'll all benefit from that. In terms of tariffs, you have to look at things piece by piece. Someone said that we have a 300% tariff on dairy exports to Canada. France won't buy our medical devices because they have some weird law that they can't recycle our electronics or something. And so I think that I'm a libertarian too, but you can't just sit in a cave and let people do things to you as well. There are tools that we can use to look out for our national interests. And I think we have to pick each thing apart.
What did Canada do to us?
They have a 300% tariff on our dairy exports. Apparently, that's what someone's quoting in the chat. I have no reason to disbelieve that. But there are little things that we can do, like if you're going to do a 300%, we're going to do a 300% on you, and then it's dropped. And I don't like trade wars. I don't like necessarily what's happening to our stock market. But that doesn't mean that it's not that the ends don't justify the means. I know it's going to be rocky to what he's saying, but if there are legitimate things that need to be done in terms of tariffs that would improve our imports and exports, I'm on board with it. We have to look at each thing individually. I can't just say Trump's bad, Putin's bad.
Are you arguing that from a negotiating standpoint? Because that's where I go is like, if this is a negotiating standpoint, I'm uneasy about it because in the end, yes, tariffs are a bad thing. They're not good. That's going to raise the cost of goods
for American workers.
Yeah, but if Trump, because Trump, see, to answer my question to you before, I feel Trump's motivation is both he believes himself to be this great deal maker and businessman, which maybe we could use that motivation to our benefit as America. And I do generally believe the guy loves America. because he's a great product of America. He both hit the pinnacle of the business world. I mean, billionaires hit the pinnacle, right? And of celebrityness, of Hollywood. I mean, not really Hollywood, but of media. Like his show wasn't Apprentice like top rated, like one of the top.
I don't know.
I mean,
but
you can go back to movies and shows that always would focus on Donald Trump. I mean, like he was in so many things. It's like he hit the pinnacle of two things that most people can't even emerge as a entry into.
I'd almost say three things. There's movies, there's television, and there's hanging out with Epstein. Those are my three. Also, I have to point out quick, the tariffs on America is 200%, and that's after it hits a level of tariff-free sales. That's from News Nation.
Sure. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Live fact check.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing that Trump is a celebrity. We agree on that. I don't think that assumes that he's for America, whatever that means. I don't think that's logically the same thing. But I agree that he is a celebrity.
No, what I mean, Karl, is
inside or outside of office?
Because America has provided him this amazing life that I truly believe that he actually likes. Now, I don't know the guy, so maybe I'm wrong on that. It certainly seems like he wants to make deals, and for that I can appreciate. One last thing, and then we gotta run. I don't want to do much more than an hour and a half. And by the way, Karl, I would really love to do this, another conversation like this, if you're down for it, because I feel like we're barely scratching the surface. But the one thing I want to follow up on is you seem to have this real issue with Doge and what Elon Musk is doing. And I don't know Elon Musk's motivation, okay? Right? Which is scary. And we've said this on the show because on the left, we would criticize George Soros having too much power, which he clearly does. So we go into this Elon Musk newfound love for being in politics with skepticism as well. But when I look at what he's trying to do with Doge, I am so excited because I'm like, I've thought the federal government is such a massive problem, and I don't just mean the deep state. The fact that we overspend by $2 trillion a year, uniparty problem, and that is financed through issuing debt to the Federal Reserve, and they print out of thin air, which then increases the prices and goods and services for us, and most adversely affects families like you and me, all three of us here who have young kids. So I'm like, oh my God, this thing actually stands a chance where we're going to expose things where the government shouldn't even be involved in. And I don't just mean corruption. I mean, hey, maybe we shouldn't even be doing this. I'm not saying it's corrupt to have a, what was that condom story? It was a condom store for like some country in Africa. It's like
to prevent AIDS.
Maybe that wasn't corruption, but what are we doing that, you know? But you seem to have some issue with Doge.
Certainly, I think some of the intentions are good. I would disagree with Elon Musk's, altruistic intention to make government hyper efficient at things. I certainly think he's in the driver's seat of how government benefits him. Right? It's funny when you donate hundreds of millions of dollars to a politician that wins the national election, you get some benefit of that. So getting rid of government waste and fraud and abuse, sure, cool, good, yeah, good, right? Taking a literal chainsaw through it, right? I don't know if that's a smart approach, right, or nuanced approach.
That's an approach.
Is a similar thing, right?
There's like zero other approach.
It's an approach. That's true.
Well, there's no other approach. That's the problem I have. Like literally, I've been following this stuff for a long time. There's been no other approach. No one's doing anything about it. Also, I see this guy who's like literally saying, "Hey, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to cut." And it's
the solution's right there. The solution's right there for you guys. You got to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid if you want to get serious about this. Your party, in control of Congress, can do that.
Right. And they won't do it.
I mean, the solution's right there.
And
we can talk about a couple billion here, which is a lot of money over the condoms to Gaza. Right. I think somebody said condoms to the Taliban. One of the politicians said, which is hilarious, which is not true. But there's a lot of government programs and there's a lot of waste. And we can argue the morality of government providing humanitarian efforts across the globe. We can talk about that. Taking it and firing tens of thousands of workers overnight without congressional approval or oversight in a way that the money has already been appropriated, through the Constitution, through Congress, to these programs, and saying Elon Musk and company and big balls, right? Big balls can say, no, we're firing these people and we're instituting a America First, like loyalist or program in there. I think that's not a good approach. Certainly getting rid of waste is good in theory. Peace in the Middle East and peace in Ukraine is good in theory. It's how you approach those problems and how you attempt to solve them, which really matter. The means do matter to some degree. Ends are good too, right? Like getting peace in the Middle East and peace in Ukraine would be a fantastic end. And we can certainly agree on that. But doing it in a way that the U.S. will displace Palestinians, right? And therefore there's peace. Well, that's not the means don't justify the ends in that case, right? So that's a foreign policy example. But Elon Musk's example of like, we're going to chop all these things without notion of what they are. We're not going to understand how government systems work because government systems are incredibly archaic and dusty and complicated and messy. But we're just going to chop them and ask questions later. And, we fired too many people. Please come back. We need all you to come back to your jobs. That doesn't seem like a smart approach. And I know Elon Musk is the smartest guy in any room he's in, as many, again, you guys probably will tell me, but that doesn't seem smart to me. It doesn't seem empathetic. It doesn't seem nuanced in any way. And so taking a chainsaw to it, yeah, there's some good in cutting government waste. There is. We can agree on that. I don't think anybody would really disagree with that. But the allegations of fraud and abuse and of this massive scale,
literally, Congress just showed they disagree with it because they have failed to do it. I mean, since we've been together in politics, if
literally. If you're serious about reducing the size of the government, you guys should be advocating cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid,
and by the way, no difference between Trump and Kamala on that. Yeah, no difference between Trump and Kamala on that issue, right? Because that is a massive problem. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the biggest drivers of it, and it's an interesting argument because it's like the older generations we can't lose our benefits, right? We were promised this. It's like, okay, got it. But then that means your grandchildren have to pay for it and they get nothing. It's like and they didn't vote for it, by the way. At some point, there does need to be a compromise unless you just don't want to ever face the music. And this is my problem with finances in Washington, D.C. is no one's ever going to face the music. And we're going to continue spiraling out of control because we're going to finance this through debt. And at least Elon Musk talks about this issue on his platform frequently, quoting Milton Friedman, quoting Ron Paul. And for that, I'm at least excited because it seems to be a conversation that has not had any bit of credibility or large coverage in the last decade.
I would say you're doing harm to those people when you're using their name and using their ideas in ways that you think are good. And Tom Woods was making this argument too. He was saying, I've never heard of somebody doing these things that Trump and company are doing in a ways that are libertarian pushing. But again, my original point was, that you have to take the rest of the baggage with you. And I don't think you're doing yourself really a service to bring people together in a way that's like empathetic or inclusive, right? Of a way that, hey, he's doing these things really well. He's talking about Milton Friedman. He's chopping these things off and all these things. But also with that, we have to institute all these horrible things as well that we definitely disagree with. But that's just cost of the business. Maybe that's just what we do. We have to increase the national debt. We have to increase spending because, what are you going to do? And I don't think you're helping your case if you really believe in libertarian ideas by supporting supporting an administration like that. I will say, so I know we're closing up, but I live in a socialist country with single payer healthcare. I pay less. I get better access, and it's way simpler here in terms of healthcare than anything that exists in the United States, including Medicare.
Well, we obviously don't have
private health insurance like that.
Yeah, we obviously don't have a free market system. We obviously don't have a free market system.
So people, it's not that scary in the single payer system.
Yeah, well,
don't believe what they tell you.
We obviously don't have a free market healthcare system in this country either,
no,
right?
Absolutely not.
And our healthcare costs are driven up by a lot of the problems that we have as a culture in America. And that's the other interesting thing. There was an intriguing thing about, RFK joining the...
Don't believe the right's propaganda. Single payer isn't that bad.
I lived in Australia for a while, and I got to say the healthcare
you really want to open up a can of worms at the end of this one thing. The one last thing I want to bring up to you, because, obviously you could see, and we haven't been able to chat before this, Carl, but you could see, I could look at this both sides, right? I could be critical of Donald Trump. Can you... Well, what do you mean? I literally agree with you on multiple items.
Yeah. Well, you can say that. I don't know how much I believe you actually push back on him. And again, I think some of the things
Watch
we're
the
talking
show.
about are horrific in terms of liberty.
Well,
and
maybe
in
the
terms of
problem is
freedom.
you just got to watch the show because,
You don't
I
push
try not to
back
do
on
so much
them.
on
Oh
social
my
media. I'd rather just express
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
think on the show. I was very critical last week as I was watching Republicans and Trump pushing to fund basically all the Doge cuts and continue on with the reckless spending. This is the first chance we've had to talk about Yemen. Definitely against it. I actually retweeted Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people. I wouldn't imagine doing that. But she's like, the people didn't vote for new wars. I was like, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. We did not vote for that stuff. Yeah, I know. Of all people, right? So I could clearly
Trump hired
criticize.
John Bolton in his previous administration. Of course,
Right,
there's some
yeah.
aspect
Oh
of
my
war
God.
mongering
Fired him
going
right
on.
The
away.
Babylon Bee had the perfect one. They had
Yeah.
John Bolton wakes up in the middle of the night from a dream, a nightmare of world peace. I was like, oh, that's so funny. So,
Yeah.
so Carl, I can criticize Trump, whether you see me do it or not. I can criticize Trump. My audience knows I can.
But that
That's why I like having MAGA Jesse here because 4D chess, and I love MAGA Jesse. Can you say one good thing that Trump's done?
Can I say his intention to end the wars is a good intention?
Okay, I like that. Let's leave it
Yeah,
right there.
I am all for if we were to end these wars in a way that was peaceful, and ending wars at the end. I don't know if they justify the means, but certainly ending the war is a good goal.
Good,
To have.
yeah.
Ending foreign wars and ending U.S. entanglements in foreign wars and
Yes.
conflicts is absolutely a good goal.
Amen.
Do I believe Trump will do that? Absolutely not. And I haven't seen evidence of it. And actually, he's increasing conflict elsewhere, and he wants to institute military elsewhere, and he wants to seize Greenland and the Panama Canal and Canada. And I don't know what to believe. So I don't think Trump is the person to do that, even though at times he
even
does
in
say
the
he wants to end
compliment,
these
he has
wars.
to diss Trump. See, this is a symptom
Yeah,
of TDS.
well,
I don't know. We have to
that-
get to the bottom of this on a future episode, Carl. We'll have to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I haven't officially diagnosed it yet. No,
Yeah.
in all seriousness,
Yeah,
great.
I know the legislators in Minnesota are now psychologists, so they can codify mental health issues. And
Yeah, that
law.
is
So
great.
that's-
It's an
that's
important-
the state, the politicians doing that is a good thing, right?
I know.
would
Yeah.
assume you guys
Far
would say.
be it they actually try to give us our surplus back or something like that. We're gonna waste their time on really important issues. Like that one wasn't a
Yeah.
red meat. All right, so very good chatting with
Yeah.
you, Carl. Still consider you a friend. Help me understand kind of where you're coming from a little bit more. I would like to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
I think the audience likes it. We'll find out. I think most people are going to watch this after the fact, and if people like it, I'd like to have these conversations again. Mostly just to help you with your TDS symptoms or my Trump blindness. I don't know which one it is, but either way, I think it's really interesting because the real reason I did this is it's like I know there's a lot of these things happening. It's not just you and me. Like this is happening all over, and people that see the world similarly, we might have different views on Trump or maybe just the MAGA movement. So I want to might make this a series to see if there's some kind of agreement.
I
in
like
the
the
end.
legitimate criticisms of Trump, and that's where I think we all need to get on board. with
Yeah, we
that.
have
Just
to.
like we called out that Eichhorn for his conduct earlier in the show, we need to hold our politicians accountable. And so I'll partner with any person of any faith, background, political disposition, as long as it's moving the ball forward towards liberty and ending tyranny. So with that, I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do. In all seriousness, thank you for having me on in the conversation, Dawson, and or Gunnar, excuse me, and Jake. But I do want to say that there is a large libertarian intellectual thought that believes many of the things that I believe, and I've been influenced by. That one good doesn't outweigh the 10 bad, right? The things that Trump may or may not do. Ending government waste, good. Doing it in a way and doing it with all the other things he does, maybe not so good, right? So there are people out there who believe this, and I know Tom Woods would disagree, but Eli Soman of Cato, many of the Cato Institute folks would agree that many of the things Trump is doing are harmful to liberty and harmful to freedom. And again, I would say even deeper, harmful to human empathy and interaction and decency. So there are people out there that would agree with me. I personally don't care how many do and who does and does not, but I think there is an argument to be made that because somebody does a percentage of things good doesn't mean that we have to accept all the bad stuff that he is and does and will do.
Awesome. We'll end on that. Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Thank you to our great sponsor today, Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give my good friend Warren a call at 612-419-7453. If you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing that home. go to johngaltmortgage.com. Also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Thank you to our Rumble Rants today. We had failed candidate K-Wall for Life. I didn't see T-Wall for Life, the lovely T-Wall for Life, but we had K-Wall for Life. And Right T. If you are a member, if you are not a member, a premium subscriber, you're going to want to today. I'm going to post the link right now into our live comments. You can go to truthhurtsnews.com, click on support us. This helps out our show, $8 a month, or you get a month off if you do an annual subscription. We'll talk about this. I'd love to hear, because this is where I get to interact with you guys more. We have so many comments that come in, we can't read them all, but I try to read every single comment from you guys, all the premium subscribers in the post show. And even if you're watching after the fact, you could still come over to the post show and participate in the conversation. So I would love to have you guys as premium subscribers, or if you're watching Rumble, you can click on join us on the top. But let's talk about Karl and see if you guys agree. I think it was nice to have him on it.
For sure. Maybe
didn't come to a conclusion, but some things don't come to conclusion after an hour and a half, you know. He's got some real deep views.
Right.
I understand where he's coming from on a lot of them, right? I feel like maybe there's some things I could persuade him on, but it would take a lot longer than an hour and a half.
I agree. It seems like he's still kind of making more of the, Putin bad, RT bad, versus let's look at each specific thing. Are tariffs bad? Well, we have them in place right now. I mean, does he want to see all tariffs go away? Is he one of those libertarians that believes in open borders? I think that there's, a lot of room for discussion there, but the nuance matters. And that's where I'm tired of, saying, oh, this person's a Harris, whatever. I want to talk to people on issues and maybe learn something.
Right.
But for the most part, we're not learning much from our folks on the left at this point.
They have
a lot of
so little
to
offer.
do.
Yeah, they have so little offer to the point where I can't even listen to them. If you would just look at, someone said he's just a TDS Democrat, at least I can listen to Karl.
Right.
Even if you want to call him that, there's some room where we can have some joint vision. But like the main talking heads on the left, I'm not talking about your average people like my neighbors and stuff like that. They're just, I don't even care what they have to say, because when you lie to us for so long, oh, he's sharp as a tack. Like, my God, I can't even listen to you guys anymore. By the way, also feel about that on some people on the right too. Just FYI, it's not just on the left that's so bad. The propagandists on the right side.
Right.
That's why our show's called Truth Hurts. I'm not afraid to be wrong on something. I'm not afraid to learn something. I have very deep-held views on the market system, on government debt, on endless wars. I'm comfortable what I believe in, but it doesn't mean I can't be changed on things. What I really care about, I would say my highest principle out there is getting the truth out there.
Right.
And that doesn't mean everything that comes out of my mouth is going to be the truth or the facts. But I'm not, if I'm going to say it, I believe it to be true.
Right.
We can always fact check and learn things.
In a world of
that's
lies.
different in the world of politics. This is the thing, and we'll get into this in the post show. It's like, that's where I kind of depart from Karl, because if Trump is going after the liars and deceivers and misinformation people and the propagandists, I'm like cheering it on.
Right.
Yes, because these people need to put in their place.
Right.
That's why we have this show.
Right.
Kayla, Karl used to live in Minnesota, but he moved to New Zealand a few years ago. Oh, Terry Time says, check the voter rolls to see if he voted here. It was a long time ago, Terry. By the way, Kayla and I knew Karl. We used to work together, on politics. So Karl's a great guy. I like Karl a lot.
Right.
And I thought he might be more of a TDS sufferer. I just hope he can keep a sense of humor. He can push back on that. We could still have some humor about it. I don't think he's suffering quite from TDS, but we'll see. Anyhow, let's go to the post show. If you're not a member, you can join us at truthhurtsnews.com. We'll be live on Locals in 1 minute. For everyone else, we'll see you here on Thursday. Take care.